Bonjour les amis, comment vous allez? J'espère que vous allez bien. Hello friend, how are you? I hope you guys are doing great. Today we are going to have our lesson 5. Yes, lesson 5. If you're just new on this channel, you may want to go back on my previous video. You will know what it's all about, lesson 4, 1 to 4. And if you're a little bit advanced already, just subscribe. Make sure that you're watching the upcoming video because you're definitely going to reach your level. For today, we're just trying to focus on people on A1 level. We'll keep going with the introduction and presenting and talking a little bit about ourselves and our environment. So today we are going to focus on answering the question, where do you live? Simply for those who don't know how to say where do you live in French is où habites-tu? In case I make it informal, the tu here is informal form. Or où habitez-vous? If I want to make it formal. Remember, the formal means I just talk to my boss, a foreigner, a stranger, so it's a polite way. And the informal, using tu, it's more likely when I'm talking to my friend, a relative. So I can choose. Either I say, où habites-tu? Where do you live? Or où habitez-vous? Where do you live? In English, it doesn't change, but in French, you can use both versions. If I'm too fast, you can pause, rewind, and watch again the video, okay? I'm just want to make sure that I'm compressing everything in the time. Now, the answer to that question, where do you live? In English, is pretty much simple. Regardless where I live, I'm just going to say j'habite. I'm saying it first in English. Regardless where I'm living, I'm just going to say I live in, and I give the place. I live in the car. I live in the Philippines. I live in Paris. I live in France. I live in Europe. I live in USA. I live in Africa. What we see here is that in, it's enough, and then you're just going to give the place where you're living, right? Now, the trick here when it's come to French is that the in change and become at least 4 preposition. In French can mean at least 4 preposition. Depending of the location or the place where you're living, the in will change. So what can be in French, depending of the location? So I have the first in any order. First in will mean a, which is 1 preposition. The second in will mean o. The third in will mean ang. And the fourth in will mean down. So you can see that the in that you have in English become a, o, ang, or down. One of the 4 you can use it. Now, when do I use it? When should I use this one and not use this one? Let's start with a. You're going to use a whenever you're talking in general about a city. I mean, when your location is in a city. So if I say, où habitez-vous? Where do you live? And then you're living in a city, you're going to say, j'habite à, and then you give the name of the city. I live in, and then you give that city. For example, j'habite à Paris. J'habite à Bulacan. Those who don't know Bulacan is a city in the Philippines. J'habite à Manille, city in the Philippines. J'habite à, and then you can just give the city where you are. J'habite à Bruxelles. J'habite à Manitoba. J'habite à, think of any city that you want. J'habite à Yaoundé. J'habite à, any city will probably work with the a. That's the first preposition. The second preposition that we're having is o. Now, o in general will always go when you're talking about the country. But be careful when you're talking about the countries that are masculine. Yes, because you have some countries that are defined as a feminine country because they're using a feminine article, and you have some countries that are defined as masculine because they're using a masculine article. So one of the exercises is you should also know if the country is defined as masculine or feminine. We can discuss it in another class, but example, j'habite au Canada. Canada, it's defined as masculine country because we say le Canada. Okay, j'habite au Japon. Why this fly is annoying me? J'habite au Japon. Japon is defined as masculine country because we say le Japon. J'habite au Sénégal. Sénégal is defined as masculine country because we say le Sénégal. J'habite au Cameroon. Cameroon is defined as masculine country because we say le Cameroon. So you see, when I'm talking about the country, can become o if the country is supposed to be masculine country. That's the second preposition. The third preposition is using ang, which also means in, remember. We are going to use un when you're also talking about the country, but be careful when you're talking about the country that are feminine, which is actually most of the country. Most of the country. We will say, for example, j'habite en Allemagne and live in Deutschland. J'habite en France. I live in France. J'habite en Belgique. I live in Belgium. J'habite en Suisse. I live in Switzerland, I think. That's Swiss in English. So you see that whenever a country is feminine, it's going to be an. Now, how do I know that the country is feminine? There are a few indices that you can look at. If ever the country ends with E, more likely that country can be English. Or if the country starts with a vowel, more likely that country can be a feminine country. Sorry, I say English first, but if a country starts with a vowel, or if a country ends with an E, more likely that country is a feminine country. So we are going to say, for example, France. La France, we say La France. Why? France ends with E, so more likely it's a feminine, right? Allemagne. Allemagne ends with E and even start with a vowel. So that's probably a feminine country. Espagne. It starts with an E, which is already a vowel, and it's even ends with another E. So that's a feminine country. So this is how you can have a little idea of whenever a country is a feminine or whenever it's a masculine. A country is a feminine because it ends with an E, or maybe it starts with a vowel. And a country is a masculine probably because it doesn't have those things that are just defined to you as a feminine. You don't have it in the masculine country. And we use an when it's come to feminine country, and we use o when it's come to masculine country. These are for the three prepositions. The last preposition is dan. Now, dan here simply means that we are expressing a close location or a small area. Let's say, for example, if you want to say, I'm living in the house. J'habite dans la maison. La maison here is house, right? Dans here is because you are living in a closed space, which is the house, right? Totally close. J'habite dans la voiture. I live in the car or inside the car. The car is a closed space, right? So you can use dans for that one. So you have the little idea now on when to use dans. You don't use down because you're living in a city. You don't use down because you're living in a country. You use down because you're living in a closed space. You're defining where you're living is in closed space. J'habite dans la chambre. I live in the room. J'habite dans l'appartement. I live in the apartment or inside the apartment. This is a closed space. Okay, it's defined as a closed space. So this is all the difference that you have in French versus the English. In English, I'm just going to say j'habite. Sorry, in English, I'm just going to say I live in, and I just give the place that I'm living, right? While in French, it's going to be either j'habite à. I'm giving a city, obligatoire. It's an obligation to give a city. J'habite au. It's an obligation to give a country that is masculine. J'habite en. It's obligation to give a country that is feminine. J'habite dans. It's obligation to give a closed space, or it's an obligation to give a small geographical area. Meaning to say, for example, you can say j'habite dans le quartier. I live in a barangay. For Filipino who are a bit familiar to this channel, barangay, you know what is barangay. But for those who are not familiar, barangay is just, I forgot the term in English, but it's like not even a city, but you know, your area, your, I need to find the term of, to express barangay. But anyway, you're living in a small geographical area. That's where you can use down, not a city, but inside your city, inside your town, your small village. That's where you can say down. For example, I live in a village. J'habite dans un village. Village is not a city. Village is not even a big town. It's just a small area inside your city. I know I have been a little bit fast giving this explanation, but you know, this is recorded. You can always go back, listen to the video, listen it again, and re-listen it again. Without further ado, let's start with the exercise. I'm going to give you some sentence, and I'm going to let you choose between four prepositions. You're going to choose between a, between un, between dans, and between o. I let you choose, okay? I give you some time before giving the answer, but if I'm giving the answer so fast, please pause the video, think of your answer, and then check the answer that I'm giving after. Without further ado, let's go with the first question. J'habite blank Londres. J'habite blank Londres. The tip that I can give you is that Londres is a city. It's London. So what will it be? I live in London. What do you think? When it's a city, yes, you got it right. It should be A in general. A is for the city. So I live in London. J'habite à Londres. Number 2, numéro 2. J'habite blank Brésil. J'habite blank Brésil. What answer are you going to put here? I give you a little tips here. Brazil is a country. So when you're talking about a country, it's either O or AN. Now the question is it a masculine or feminine country? Is the country defined as masculine or feminine? If the country is defined as masculine, it probably means that it doesn't start with a vowel and maybe it doesn't start with an E. That's the case with Brazil, which is Brazil. So therefore, this one will be masculine. And for masculine country, we are using O. So we are going to say j'habite au Brésil. Number 3, j'habite blank une petite maison. J'habite blank une petite maison. I live blank small house, a small house. J'habite blank a small house. Now, are we talking about the city? No. Are we talking about the country? No. So we are talking about a closed space. So if you're talking about a closed space, without further thinking, is DAN. DAN is defining a closed space. We can have another exercise, but I'm not going to have an exercise on this video. We're going to have another video right after this video where you're going to have exercise and practicing a little bit the right preposition that we need to use. If you have any question, don't forget to leave it in comment. I may not answer it right now, but I'll definitely answer it as you're progressing with the class. Remember, if you are just new on this channel, you don't know what you're talking about, please go back to video 1. You'll have a little bit context. If you are very advanced already in French, still subscribe. Couple days from now, you're going to reach your level and you will definitely find whatever you're looking for. While waiting, à bientôt.